Welcome back, everybody, to a second installment of the Quiet Collapse of Canada, where we break down Canada's financial situation. It's quite the precarious situation we find ourselves in, quite the sticky situation. But I am here to make facts known and break down these financial topics to help inform you. Just like the last video, we're going to start with some conceptual alignment so we can all agree some definitions of terms before we get into the meat of this video. All right, so these terms will help you better understand some of the concepts we talk about, and if you ever listen to the news, you might just catch a thing or two that you now understand from these videos, and you'll say to yourself, hey, I know that. So the first thing I want to bring to your attention, we're going to be looking at some charts of this later on in the video, but the first thing is debt servicing costs to a percentage of GDP. Basically what that does, it takes two metrics. One is the debt servicing cost, so how much it costs to pay down the interest alone on a debt. So that's not paying back principal, that's not making the debt smaller, that is simply just interest, right? So if you have a credit card with $1,000 on it, you're getting 20% interest. That's just you paying the $200 down every time it pops up, okay? Now, the GDP is the gross domestic product. That's how much a country makes in a year, right? So if you think of a country like a business, it's the annualized revenue. Revenue is the right word? Revenue is the right word for that, I think. Anyway, it's the output of the business at the end of the year. That's what GDP is for a country, right? So how many goods we produce, how much money we make, all of that is comprised in the GDP. So when we put debt servicing costs against GDP, we get a ratio, a very important ratio, which we'll talk more about later on in this video. All right. The next thing I want to bring to your attention is the Canadian dollar credibility and inflation tolerance. All right, so you have to understand that the Canadian dollar is a fiat currency, just like every other currency in the world except for Bitcoin. And it is extremely susceptible to inflation, like we saw post-COVID. But what we need to understand right now is Canada is in a very precarious situation. The credibility of our nation is wavering quite a lot globally, which means people are less willing to hold our dollar, which doesn't give it much strength, doesn't give it much pull in the globe, anything like that, which in turn leads to, first of all, perceived devaluation and then devaluation actualized. Right alongside that is the Bank of Canada flexibility in its policy. It's pretty stuck. It is pretty stuck. One, because on the Canadian dollar side, we can't handle much more inflation, right? They're running 3+% if you use CPI, which is a heavily manipulated number. And then on the other side, they have growing debt servicing costs. Not only that, but their debt is growing as well. Those two kind of grow hand in hand. So on the one side, if you jack interest rates too high to cool inflation, right, to bring it below the CPI, the debt becomes really fucking expensive, okay? But now if we let rates come down to service the debt, to make that easier, well, guess what? The inflation runs hot again and our currency devalues even more. You see this tricky spot we're in here? The final thing I want to bring to your attention is the confidence not only in the currency, but in our debt markets and our bond markets. Now, earlier I had mentioned that people are no longer holding the Canadian dollar like they used to. Perceived devaluation. The same thing is happening with our bonds. Okay, it's a very similar situation to what the States are in right now. We cannot find enough people, whether that be individuals like you and me, whether that be pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, hedge funds, anyone of that nature, nobody really wants to hold our bonds anymore. Okay, so you can see both in the currency and in our debt market, the confidence is waning quite a lot, which is very important to keep notice of. Okay, so nobody wants to hold our debt, nobody wants to hold our currency, and the Bank of Canada is quite, let me rephrase this. The Bank of Canada is stuck between a rock and a hard place in its policy flexibility, right? On one end lays big inflation, on the other end lays big debt cost. Okay, they're stuck right in the middle. Okay. All with wavering confidence in debt and in the dollar. These regimes typically last like 20, 25 years before we see some sort of implosion or reworking of the system, right? The best example I can give you is in the United States, we had Bretton Woods. So was it 1940 after World War II? Okay. It allowed the US government to take on a tremendous load of debt while interest rates were artificially suppressed. Okay, so 1942, when did Nixon take it off the gold standard? About 71 or 72? Correct me if I'm wrong there. So we have about roughly 30 years of repressed interest rates to essentially erode away all the debt they took on from World War I and World War II, and then eventually the cycle reset from Nixon taking the dollar off the gold standard. Okay, let's get into some data now. Okay, so on the left we have the debt servicing cost as a percentage of GDP. On the left is Canada, and on the right is the system. See, we had massive loads of debt. All right, and what do? We suppressed interest rates, and we let inflation run its course, right? So servicing costs came down in that nice slope. What it really means is servicing costs didn't actually come down. The debt became worthless, and the currency became worthless as well. What that means is the debt and the currency itself became worthless, in turn making the servicing costs cheaper. We can see the same thing happen in the States, right? And it's picked back up both in Canada and in the States over recent. Now we can see that the debt is rising, and these countries, man, they don't have a plan to pay it back. Their plan is to suppress interest rates, inflate away the fucking debt, inflate away your savings, inflate away your purchasing power, just to hell with all of it. That's their plan. So when we see this debt tick up, they're really just showing you, okay, time to let the money printers on. And now, I thought this one was pretty interesting. It's a breakdown to show contributing factors to debt growth in Canada. So at the bottom we have municipal, and then provincial, and then federal. Now what we can see here is that it's all fucking federal. It's all federal. Your municipal, like $10 million loan to build a new rec center is not the leading factor. So if anybody tries to tell you, oh, we can't afford this because of this and that, yeah, check the fucking budget, man. So we can see from this that the federal spending is far beyond what it needs to be. Last video, okay, it's interest payments against healthcare, and what we can see here is that interest payments went fucking parabolic. Servicing costs went parabolic. Well, healthcare kind of linear slope. But anyway, servicing costs now outpace healthcare. Major fucking red flag, man. Why? Because in Canada, at least, our healthcare is public. For better or worse, you fucking decide. It's actually getting pretty bad, man. But beforehand, when we were down here to the bottom left, it wasn't too bad, right? There's a lot of money going around chasing fewer healthcare. But now, not a lot of money chasing a lot of fucking healthcare. The states now outspend their military budget in interest payments. Right? That's what we're looking at here, except Canada. Hopefully, this absolute tangent of a video unlocked something for you guys. Hopefully there was some value found in here. If so, drop a comment down below. I'd love to hear it. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And as always, the Substack link is down below. If you guys want to catch up on some of my writing, I go through a lot of these topics in depth. More data, more words, more charts. It's pretty fun. Anyway, it's been Chris. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.